Hi everyone and welcome back. This is Mindy Eggen. In today's video, I am going to be doing some watercoloring with zig markers. Zig markers are a great starting point if you want to learn to watercolor. They're very easy to use and they are also pretty reasonably priced. You can get them as individual markers or in a pack. So I'm going to walk you through how I store my markers, a few different papers that I use to do the coloring with, and also how to actually use the markers. So first I'm going to share with you how I store my zig markers. I have 3 bags here. These are collapsible marker bags from Pear Blossom Press. And on these bags are Kathy Racusin's top 10 coloring tips. Now these bags are really nice because they're easy to have on your desk. They're great for traveling or even if you just want to go in another room to color. So I have my zig markers in here. You just pull that zipper across and then the top slides down into just kind of like a little cup. So you can see it's very flexible. It's a very nice size. I don't know exactly how many markers I have in here, but I do have the full zig marker set and it took me about 3 bags. And now I'll give you a closer look at these markers. So it's not really a marker. They are technically called Zig Clean Color Real Brush Markers. And they have a brush tip, which I'm going to bring up closer to the camera here for you. What's really nice about these is that they are water-based, so that is why they are good for watercoloring, or you can blend them together just on their own, which I'll share in another video. These markers are also not refillable, so if you go through one of them, you will have to purchase another marker of that particular color. Now we're going to talk about paper. So I have 3 different kinds here that I typically will use, starting with the Strathmore Bristol Smooth Surface paper. And this is exactly it. It is a very, very smooth paper. You can pick this up at almost any craft supply store. I like to trim mine down into about 4¼ by 5½ sheets or bigger if needed. And this is also great for ink blending too. Now the next paper that I use is Distress Watercolor paper from Ranger and Tim Holtz. This is a really great paper because it is super, super white. One side is rough, one side is smooth, so you can pick which side you want, and it holds up to water very, very well. The Bristol Smooth is okay, just depending on how much water you are adding to your project. And then the last one that I have here is the Fabriano Artistico Extra White paper. And this one, again, is another watercolor paper. I use this with regular watercolors as well. It comes in a block, and I just peel that away, and I can watercolor on this. This also holds up to water really well. Before I get into my card, I want to share with you a few stamps that I have watercolored before or I think would be really good for using with the zig markers, starting with that Majestic Peony, which was what was just on screen. This is the Always Roses stamp set that I will be using today, and it does have a coordinating die. There is also this Peaceful Violets stamp set. I think that larger one is really great because it has a lot of open space in the petals, just like the Always Roses. And that one also has some coordinating dies. And then the last one here is the Mayflowers stamp set. Now these are all from Gina Designs, and I think that image would be really great to watercolor as well, just depending how much room you want your image to have, if you want wide open petals or if you want smaller areas to color. I'm also going to have a coordinating blog post that goes with this video, and I am going to provide a few extra pictures in there using the Majestic Peony stamp set because I've used that a ton with my zig markers. So I will include that in the blog post, which will be linked down below in the video description. For the card today, I am going to use the Bristol Smooth cardstock. I do really like coloring on it because it is a really smooth paper. So I am just taking these images from the Always Roses stamp set. I'm inking them up in Gina Designs Embossing ink. And I'm going to stamp it twice because since it is kind of hard to see on that white paper, I want to make sure I have a really good impression of all of those lines. And then I can sprinkle on some of the Gina Designs gold embossing powder. I am a huge fan of heat embossing, but I also think it is a great starting point if you're just not ready to go without that barrier. The embossing will create a barrier so your colors don't mix and your water doesn't run into the next petal. So I think it's a really, really great starting point. And now I'm going to move in to actually watercoloring the image. So I'm starting here with a full screen to kind of show you what I have on my desk. I taped my paper down to just a cutting board so that it doesn't warp with the amount of water that I add. Now, as the video goes on, I am going to zoom a little bit so you can see kind of more of the finer details, and I will be speeding it up because I do just repeat the same steps over and over. So up top, what you don't see there is I have just a little cup of water, and then I also have a paper towel off on the side to kind of dab off any excess water that might be on my brush. And I'm starting with this really light green. This is number 041, light green in the Zig marker. And I started by coloring a little bit onto the petal, whatever is closest to the actual stem. And then I'm picking up a little water and blending that out. I want to have it go lighter as it gets towards the edge of the petal. So if you see my hand disappear, it is because I am dipping my brush in my water, dabbing it off on the paper towel, and then bringing it over to my leaf. Now you can have your image just like that, just have one layer of color, but I do like to add multiple layers of color just to really kind of add contrast and depth and give this more of shape to the image. So this second color I had used is number 047, which is turquoise green. And now I'm coming in with a little bit darker of a color. Actually, it's really dark. And that's number 038 peacock blue. Now that one, I don't add a lot of color, and I do rinse off my brush quite a bit because I still want to have that light green in the background. Moving on to this large rose, this is one of the reasons why I think this is a great starting point, is because there is so much room to work with in this particular image. So I'm starting with my first layer, which is number 021 light carmine, and you can see it is just a really, really light pink. This is actually one of my favorite colors to use. I use it so much, I probably should get it replaced. And I'm just adding that color just kind of around the edges of the petals and then blending that out with that water. Now I'm going to come in with number 024, which is wine red, and I'm repeating that same process, adding a little bit of color and then blending that out. Now I am using a silver black velvet brush. This is a number 4. You use whatever you are comfortable with, but what I do suggest is that whatever you start playing with as for a brush in the watercoloring, stick with it because each brush holds water differently. And once you get used to how much water your brush holds or doesn't hold, that's what makes it, that's what kind of what you have to practice with, is just how the water moves. How much water do you need? That's why I have a paper towel off on the side. I just kind of know that is my flow. That's how I work. And I just really love the results. I'm also kind of coloring this just like I would with any Copic markers. Wherever there is a petal overlapping another, that's where I'm adding my color to, so that I'll have the darkest areas where a shadow would be if I was Copic coloring. Now there were some areas that I thought needed just a little bit more depth, so I'm going to come in and blend those out. And I do blend all the way to the edge. I am just really dipping my brush in the water, catching off that excess water on the paper towel so that it all just has a really nice smooth transition throughout the petal. Once I have that done, and this does actually dry pretty quick, I'm going to just peel back my blue painter's tape that I had used to attach that paper to the board and remove that. And then I'm going to use the coordinating dies to die cut out these images. Now I really get my head in here because I don't want to mess it up at this point. So once I am sure that everything is lined up properly, I can hold it in place with low tack tape and run it through the die cut machine. For sentiment, I'm going to die cut the word enjoy out of some gold foiled cardstock. And this enjoy die cut word is from the Gina K Designs Time to Coast card kit. It will be sold individually at a later date, so just keep an eye out for that. And then for my actual card, I have a panel here that I just added a bunch of colorful rainbow strips to diagonally and then trimmed off the excess. I did layer this panel with 3 more pieces of heavyweight cardstock cut to the same size, so it's going to add dimension. And then I added that to a white card base. So my card is actually going to measure 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Now you can see I futz around a lot with placement of my image. What I originally had planned, I decided not to do, so I just sit and play with the placement until I'm happy with it. Once everything is where I like it, I'm going to just remove the sentiments and start attaching everything down with a tape runner. Now that smaller sentiment that you see there on black cardstock, That is from the Enjoyable Greetings stamp set, also from the Time to Coast card kit. And like I said, just keep an eye out on the Gina K Designs website because those do get released individually at a later date. Now, that sentiment I had just stamped in embossing ink and heat embossed on black cardstock with white embossing powder. And I had trimmed that sentiment down using the Master Layouts 3 die set. There is a small flag banner in there. I just trimmed off the banner pieces, but that way my sentiment is aligned perfectly and trimmed into this perfect small sentiment. Now, I had thought about adding some foam tape behind that rose, but then I would have to really mess with getting this word enjoy on there. So I just attached the rose flat to the card front with a tape runner, and now I'm using my Barely Art glue to attach the word enjoy. The Barely Art glue is just a great adhesive. The reason I'm using it is because it has a really, really fine point on it, and that was really helpful with the small, delicate die cut word. So after I kind of hold that in place for a minute and make sure it's adhered to the front of the card, I added black foam squares behind my smaller sentiment, and then I kind of fiddle around with this too a little bit to find out where I want it, and then I can push down and adhere those foam squares to the front of the card. Then I'll just flip this over and trim off any excess that might be hanging off, which wasn't a lot. And there we have the completed card using the Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers to do our watercoloring. I hope this video has helped you and encourages you to get out your zigs or just take a look at them if you find them of interest. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, I would love it if you gave it a thumbs up. And if you are not already subscribed to my channel, I would love to have you become a subscriber, and then also just click that little bell notification button so you are notified when new videos come up. Thanks so much for joining me, and have a great day.